Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sparing Partners. I'm Monica Paulini, your host, and I have the pleasure to have with me Faiq Khan, who is the SVP for Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Rakuten Symphony. And that's quite a large part of the world, and I would say, a very interesting one these days. So, what we're going to talk about today is monetization. I have never written a report. I'm writing one right now on monetization because it's a very hard topic. Everybody talks about it. It's a thing Mark tries to say. Everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. I think that monetization falls in that category there. So it's a sort of an evergreen topic. But I think that we're going to try to say something a little bit different today in terms of how should we think about it, how to go about it. So, Faiq, welcome to Sparing Partners, and why don't you tell us how you got there? What is that you're working on in this huge and interesting part of the world right now?
Thank you, Monica. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you very much for hosting me. And yes, I'm very, very excited and very thrilled that I'm working with Rakuten Symphony. Yes, I look after the business for Europe, Middle East, Africa. It's a huge, huge part of the world where we are trying to grow. Actually, I'll take a one step backward and tell a little interesting personal story that I got introduced to Rakuten from some common industry colleagues in my past life, where I tried to do some business with Rakuten Symphony and with my previous job. And they were, a client of mine. And I was so fascinated with seeing that the brand, what Rakuten has achieved in Japan and in the global world. And then they were entering into the, telecommunication sector, and the journey they were embarking on was one daring and very, very different. I clearly remember, I think in 2018, 19, I wrote a blog. Totally, I was not connected with Rakuten in any ways. And I mentioned that how companies like Reliance in India and Rakuten are going to change the telecom industry. Interestingly enough, I ended up taking a bit of break in my life after my previous job, and I didn't work for almost 1 year. But Rakuten's story was something very close to my heart, and I was following. And interestingly enough, and luckily enough, when I came back to work after a bit of break, I was fortunate enough to get the chance to work, and that's why I am here. And it's even more pleasing to see that how Rakuten Symphony, Rakuten mobile journey has flourished and accomplished. Today, we take a lot of pride that, by end of 2026, we will be a network of more than 500,000 cells and 100,000 sites and, more than 10 million subscribers and, profitable, which is very, very important. I think you've been part of the listening to stories and then discussing these stories about Rakuten and how people have somewhat, doubted in the beginning and, that this is not going to work. But today it is a reality. And I mean, we take a lot of pride on Achim and Mikitani, the journey he embarked, and the team, Shrat Sevastava, and everybody, what the founding team of the Rakuten Mobile, what they have achieved. I think we have to recognize the cornerstones, what they picked, that they're going to build a mobile network and less than 1/10 the cost what other mobile operators and infrastructure on the infrastructure costs they spend. They truly not only believed but made sure that everything was fully automated, and for that they required that complete virtualized cloud native and architecture and implementation of that, so that in future they can truly reap the benefits of it. And today, in telco world, of course, still remains a little bit challenging when you're coming with a very complex brownfield. But having said that, it's possible, and some mobile operators does a better job than the others. But that's why we run a huge operation with so little people, around 200 people, give and take, looking after a huge network of 10 million subscribers of almost 100,000 sites. So it's exciting to see that journey, and then it continues, that we have a vision to be even bigger and get to 20 million subscribers. And lastly, I think worth highlighting that given the theme which you're writing about, monetization, which is very, very exciting, and people don't often talk much enough about it. given that Rakuten story is built around the ecosystem Rakuten brings, and especially in Japan, they are the largest online credit card bank. They are the biggest travel platform besides many other services, including Ichiba, which is, the e-commerce. The cross monetization of what we call a customer centric lifecycle membership. That's the key. And that's where Rakuten has done a phenomenal job, which is a cheat sheet, a guidebook for other telcos to try and copy paste. And that's why we are fortunate that we came from techco and entered into the telco sector. And while all the others are going in the other direction, they can take the best out of this guidebook and make more. And that's where customer monetization, the real business, is the forefront in every conversation, and that helps. So sorry for a long-winded answer, but that's a little introduction of my story, how I ended up here, and then how Rakuten Mobile is very successful, and we all are very passionately proud about it.
No, and you really should. And this is very interesting because it's I think that having worked at the vendor gives you a different type of perspective because you just have to see the whole 360-degree kind of environment out there. And but you also mentioned Reliance. And there is one thing in common between Rakuten and Reliance, I would say, well, maybe more, but one that comes to mind is the fact that at the beginning, they were both looked with a lot of skepticism, if not outright, like, what are you guys thinking about? You're never going to go anywhere. And that's not what happened. And you got questioned a lot at the beginning when you launch a service. Obviously, you're not going to be profitable at the very beginning. No matter, it doesn't matter. It just takes time. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're doing well or right or wrong, doesn't matter. And instead, companies that are more follow the usual pattern got much less scrutinized. But I think that what's interesting here is Reliance and Rakuten succeeded in very different ways. It's not so there's not just a single way to succeed in becoming profitable. There are different ways, but clearly the more established way is not working that well.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's something that we can, as an industry, all agree that there is something that we need to do things somewhat differently. So
Yeah. Yeah,
and
you're
so
very right. And if you
and you have a quite clear idea of what is that. So maybe you can tell us where is that you think that we should be doing differently. And again, it's not just Rakuten, so tell us.
Yeah, so I before I lose that chain of thought,
Yeah.
and I apologize for like being getting excited to and interrupting you a little bit. You know, I think one thing in Rakuten's story we take a lot of pride in Japan, while on different scales of cost of living, cost was going up. The
Mm.
cost of a mobile subscription or telecommunication, we were able to bring it down. And I think it adds to the wallet share and life value or quality of life of a common subscriber. Okay. So I'll give you two spins here. What one from a Rakuten and Japan perspective, that inflation, cost of living being high, and we being able to make a meaningful difference in bringing the cost of telecommunication or cost of a mobile line down. And that has helped in our mission, our values for subscribers in Japan. Now, I live in UAE, and I always like to give this example that, you know, what we spend on our mobile connection is important. And often the word customer retention, customer satisfaction is confused. And then there are very gray lines and put it into one bucket that, it's all good. But being a satisfied customer does it make me a loyal customer? And that's where I always try to talk about that mobile operators are not doing in general a great job of making sure that they differentiate between retention, satisfaction, and loyalty. Yes, mobile operators are doing best, building the best coverage networks, and we can come back on that point as well, that in very near future, coverage, which has been so important in a mobile network storyline, may not be the most highest differentiating factor. But coming back to the point of customer retention, loyalty, am I gonna spend? Am I gonna change my subscription line if another player comes and gives me a better value? Possibly, yes. I'm not going to go because I'm not satisfied, but if they give me a better value for my wallet share, yes, I may. And this is where, in general, the mobile operators have not been able to do a great job in bringing an ecosystem of offerings that how they can add value. I mean, I often give examples of T-Mobile in USA, the T-Mobile Tuesdays, and some customers, some mobile group operators like Vion, one in with Vion operation in Jazz in Pakistan, they've been able to give a dozens of ecosystem services and better value for their money and wallet share taking, and the customers are loyal more to these. And that's what has been in Rakuten's story. In a lot of places, including in my case, we're not loyal. We might be satisfied, but we're not loyal. And that's where I think there is an opportunity that can mobile operators think differently and put business at the forefront, monetization at the forefront, that how do they make more dollars out of my wallet share. I mean, there are certain other super apps or apps which I use in the country where I live in UAE, which takes more of my wallet share. And that's how mobile operators needs to start thinking.
Yeah, well, I guess that the question is that, I pay like less than £10 a month in the UK for my phone, and Italy the same thing. Even the US, I don't pay much. And, as you say, if there is a reason, I would pay more. But I don't see any reason. But I do pay for services, for apps, but that amount of money that I spend doesn't go to the operator. So there is a question of, given that there is some amount of money that people spend on services, how is the operator, or is the operator in a place to get those things? Now, my view is that in Rakuten, but other operators as well, because that started before even Rakuten. In South Korea, it's the same. People seem to have a deeper relationship with the operator than they do in Europe in general. US is kind of in between. And so it's not a question of churn. It's a question that you see, you don't pay for connectivity, you pay for service and the experience. And so, I'm now looking at the cost for coffee and the cost for mobile phones. But when you think about it, when you go to a coffee shop and you get coffee, you don't pay
Mhm.
for coffee. I mean, the cost of the coffee is more percentage of what you pay. You pay for the experience of being in the shop,
Absolutely. Very good point.
whatever the thing is. And so, and sometimes you don't actually go to the place that has the best coffee. You go to the place that you like the best, even though it's a coffee shop. So it's the same. I think it's some similar logic. The
Yeah.
question is like, can a mobile operator get the location? I mean, the equivalent of the location of the coffee shop, the experience, and
Yeah.
that because they've been competing so hard on pricing, they kind
Hmm.
of lost that part because they're selling the coffee, they're not selling the coffee shop.
Yeah, you're spot on. You're spot on. And I mean, some people can be a little bit finicky about their coffee taste, but 90% or 99, 95% is going to be about the experience and the convenience. And again, maybe, some having better loyalty programs and so on.
Yeah,
And I always go back that if
yeah.
you have a way to get that experience in whatever way to get gain from your customer. And yes, I completely agree. And I mean, to your point that you pay £10 and you're happy to pay to mobile on various mobile apps on App Store, it goes to the same point that in previous transformation of the telecom industry, mobile operators were not able to do the better job than not to be just the pipe and how to monetize. Now, take the example of we're going to very soon start talking about 6G. We're talking about the potential biggest revolutionary industrial trend since the introduction of, internet, artificial intelligence, AI, and the opportunity is huge. So there is an opportunity for mobile operators to know more and be hyper personalized about what one personnel wants. And they have no shortage of data without violating any security or GDPR protocols or anything, that they can be able to get more wallet share. And I mean, as simple as, lots of mobile operators are giving content, but what content is most relevant for a specific personnel, and how to get that through this device for that mobile operator rather than I go and pay to Apple TV. That's one example. There are so many other ideas while I'm walking in a shopping mall. There is so much of information available which can be monetized by a very simple app or service, because you need to be giving a service, a value on the right result oriented things which I am looking for. And then I'm happy to give them more. And that's where the opportunity is. So again, I really, really hope that mobile operators are going to be able to do something better this time to capitalize and monetize those opportunities, rather than again just being a mobile subscription line and somebody else making money. I mean, some of it is inevitable, but the question is, can they do differently this time? I believe with all the past learnings, the consciousness, the awareness, and the desire is more in a lot of group operators and challenging operators. The question is, can they execute fast enough?
Yeah, and I think that in telecoms, we work with a technology that is absolutely awesome. When you think about what is that we can do in a mobile network, so from a technology point of view, it's like amazing. And we kind of fell in love with the technology a little bit too much, maybe. And so everything that everybody else shares our excitement, and they do, I mean, well, they do, they love the network, they're just not willing to pay for it. That's the only problem, or to pay more to get a somewhat better network. But on the other hand, there is something, as you kind of alluded to, in the fact that mobile operators have a source the amount of data of their users that nobody else has. However, when you think about it, when I think about my phone, Google Maps is much better at giving me personalized suggestions or advice than my mobile operator. My mobile operator is completely silent on that. And I'm not quite even sure how, but anyway, but so, it's not like people don't, somebody is doing it. It's just not the mobile operators. So what do you think that they could be doing differently? Because
I mean,
okay, let me just say something. So Rakuten is in a sort of an enviable position because you have a relationship with subscribers, which is oftentimes prior to the network. So the network comes on top, which is what fascinated me at the beginning, because instead of building a network and then building the other services, you kind of went the other way around. You had the services and you needed a network to sell the services. So that was kind of built in without any, you didn't have to do any effort because you had it there already. But most operators don't.
fair, but 3 points here, and I think I want to cover 3 points before I lose chain of thought. So number one, yes, Rakuten does get customers because they also had an Ichiba customer, e-commerce customer, or online a credit card customer who came to become a Rakuten Mobile customer. Yes, but Rakuten Mobile do acquire customers without being, a customer of their ecosystem. So that's point number one. But they always keep the monetization that once they acquire their customer, that customer will not only get a telecommunication mobile subscription line, but will also get much bigger value for with the wider ecosystem. So that plays role in on that. What you said, what you asked, what mobile operators needs to do differently is like they can't just innovate or implement technology for the sake of having the wow factor of the technology. It needs to have a go-to-market principle, a value, a business value, and understanding that what wow technical factor they are bringing, how that can be monetized, how that can be sold, and how does the whole life cycle of that sales machinery will work, and they can get an X dollar out of it. If that understanding is not there and they're just bringing the technology for the sake of technology, which we happen to be doing in the industry for many, many years, keeping the business and what is the product, what is the value, how do we do the go to market for that, we're not going to be able to change. So first of all, business first mindset, the business was first mindsets, and understanding that how the go to market will work, what is the value, what is the cost, and the business case of that, we will not be able to change. I give you another example. I was in an event recently, and there was a lot of discussion about satellite and partnerships, NTN play, and with 6G coming up, and currently lots of satellite partnerships being already launched, where you know with on LTE, there's already satellite partner networks, voice calls and data calls are going to be possible. And there was a big question that, okay, how are we going to be able to monetize and ask subscribers more money for that? I mean, surely there needs to be a business case. So monetization is important. But just thinking that for a subscriber who is mostly in a domestic house usage, to a simple going by a train to his office and coming back, or her office and coming back, maybe you don't need to think that what they will pay for the extra service by adding £5 or £2 subscription. No, I think what we need to think is, okay, when they are going to be in remote areas, or there are times when a normal coverage will not work, they will remain connected to their home security, looking out for their pets or kids or whatever service they want to, and they can be charged for that. And unless and until we start getting wired this way, we will not be thinking monetization in the right way, and then we will continue to struggle. So I think the business first mindset, according to the market patterns and why somebody will give you an extra dollar, to your point, sometimes we don't care so much that coffee, but we care for the experience. Same way, how those people will give extra $2 or $4, if you'll just say, just give me for the sake of like having the possibility when you may need, versus this is why you need when you're doing this, and for that we are going to charge you this. I think customers will be very, very open to pay for that. And that's an example that what needs to change, because these trends are going to get implemented. So, and one point I earlier made, and I want to repeat, you know, starting my career in telecommunication as an RF engineer, planning coverage, what's the percentage of the coverage with what signal strength level, has been bread and butter for, planning networks and everything. Imagine that, almost coming 3 decades, and now it's going to be like, it's no more the differentiation factor. It's going to be a commodity with the satellite partnership play and TN play. So again, do I see this as a big change or a big opportunity? It's an opportunity that we can rationalize some of our infrastructure costs. Yes, the satellite partnerships is going to create a cost, but the monetization thought process needs to be different.
Yeah,
So I hope it makes
but
sense
yeah,
to you.
and I think that there is also here a two-part to this. So you can have services where you sell the experience, the trust, the points, whatever that might be for a specific operator. So that's kind of an additional source of revenues. So we can look at different new sources of revenues that you get from other sources. But when you look at the network, as I say, it has become a commodity, absolutely valuable and crucial, because nobody's giving up their mobile phone. We know that. But the thing is that, should we also kind of adjust to that, in a sense that we used to see growth of 20% a year, because we went to a situation where nobody had a phone, everybody has a phone. So clearly the growth is there. But now pretty much everybody that wants to have a phone has a phone. and they're
Hmm.
not going to pay much more, if at all, for the basic connectivity. So should we also, at one point, like for the basic connectivity, sort of accept that it's not like with 6G or 5G advanced or whatever, people will start paying, because they won't, because we got them used to pay as little as they can, and they're, might not be perfect, but you live with it.
I will share my views in a different way. I often end up having these conversations with CTOs and commercial offices in our conversations that what is your ARPU for the telco subscription or telco revenues, and what is your non-telco services ARPU or LTV? And this is where, you know, really the rubber hits the road, that like how much they're focused and able to get more of the wallet share by doing the non-telco services. And that's where the monetization and the extra business services comes into the play, because just for the sake of making browsing, using my apps, voice connectivity, as we all understand that voice minutes have gone down and data is what we use for, I mean, a human, you know, attention of a span to talk for long, with the age curve going towards more on the Gen Zs, is going lower to lower. So, this is where we need to act and think differently. And I often find that there's hardly any mobile operators which are doing equal or 1.5 times or double the non-telco ARPU. We at Rakuten, of course, as you said, that we come from the other side of the journey, so we are very fortunate that we do that. That's ambition, but there have been lots of tier one European conversations I was having. Yes, there are some developing countries where some group operators have been able to do better, because they were able to sense the business opportunity and the right value for the subscribers, and they were able to gain more on their ARPUs for non-telco services. But in general, it seems like, and without sounding condescending to anybody, that the commercial team, the sales team, are missing an opportunity and on non-telco revenues. And I mean, yes, there is a growth, and they are started to focus on it, but there's much more can be done in this area.
And I would say that, yeah, not only there is more that can be done, but we could spend a little bit more time looking at other verticals. What is that people do, say, in the airline industry? I mean, any industry that I can think of has been better at selling value rather than whatever they happen to be selling.
Yeah.
You don't sell a seat on a plane. You know, you sell a bigger package. So why is it that we are a little bit, or at least my impression is that we are not as good as to look at, I mean, we can learn from others, but it seems like we were not spending enough time.
I mean, I often say it. I mean, you have challenged me enough to bring my core strong feeling, which I always share. I think it's a generational issue, and that is to do with that a lot of us who are driving this industry are generation Y and X, trained by X and generation, and some, of course, millennials now getting into the leadership position. And it feels to me that there is so much of baggage we carry about the technology itself only, that we are not able to see the business side. So it requires as if a radical change and handing over to unbiased Gen Z for more stronger decision making, that what makes sense. So I often call it a generational issue. And if you look at it like certain other verticals and industries, and I'm not talking about specifically airline industry, it's some other industries where the business trends have changed drastically. Probably a generational shift game has played a bigger role. But that's my philosophical view. Maybe you will agree or not, but you know.
Actually, you bring, I want to look into that because, right, that you might be right, but is it really true? So I've been doing work with utilities, transportation. I can tell you that they have a lot of, you know,
Like
legacy.
our
In
age
fact,
people. That's what you're saying.
well, actually, there is both legacy in the infrastructure. Like if you look at trains or airplanes, I mean, I remember the one issue when you work with in the transportation, they ask you for like a 20-year business plan, and we'd be just like, we don't have that concept, we don't do it. For us,
Mm,
5 years is
mm,
max.
mm,
So
mm,
they are in a way more stuck to longer periods,
mm.
and yet they seem to be more agile in terms of business models. So I'm going to
So,
be looking into that because it's a very interesting topic.
yeah, yeah, it is. It
But
is. And I think
the issue is that are we really different in terms of the workforce structure?
so. I think what also in another way, what you're saying, and if I reflect back on that point, there were operators who in past did not go for 3G and they went straight to 4G. They had a better
Mhm.
way of monetizing 2G until they were ready for 4G. I mean, now this happened in lots of underdeveloped countries. So sometimes because of our G sequences, we're putting more money
To
into
the
the infrastructure
uh,
versus the ROI in the business case. And we can look that way. And then it goes a little bit to the GSMA bodies and authorities and regulatory bodies as well, that how the industry has been driven by the technology upscaling, where there is definitely some level of need for higher speed and throughputs and so on, but the lack of use cases. And that's why this time with 6G, there's a lot of dialogue that it's going to be very use case driven, because that's where the failure or the challenge of 5G remains. COVID did give us a false hope. So I see your point that maybe other than the generational aspect, which is my belief, not being able to have a very long-term ROI cycle, that can be also one of the reasons. I mean, again, if I give you another side of the coin and my views on it, with 6G and AI, we will see a lot of transformation. Some of the vendor landscape is going to change because a lot of this is driven by authorities where, you know, there is monopoly of certain bigger vendors. There is more challenge and consolidations in 10 years on mobile operator landscape as well. And you will see some of the MVNOs becoming more successful. So that's again a little bit more very strong personal views I have, that there is a lot of transformation because we just in this sector or vertical tend to act slow. And that's why with the opportunity and the challenges, what's going to happen with AI, you might have a different landscape on the players who will be playing in the field, and that always happens over a couple of industry transformation with the technology. So that may again we will see.
Actually, you put a very interesting spin on the AI part because oftentimes when people think of AI, they think of we sell AI, like, and I don't believe in that model per se because if anything, there is already too much AI that is kind of so I'm not gonna buy anything like, oh, like, you have the AI agent. Like, no, I already have too many of them, around. But what AI might do is that it might change the network so that you can do new things. You can have new operators. You can have so it's not so much AI as something you sell, but something that allows you to do things differently. Which is
Absolutely.
which okay, but in terms of the monetization, I think we shouldn't think of AI as the thing you sell, but the thing that allows you to sell better or to sell
Yeah.
different things.
No, no,
Not
absolutely.
so, and I think that that's a very different view from the prevailing one, which I think is much more convincing and interesting, and allow us to move forward. So, well, that was excellent. It's an excellent way to close this discussion. We should check again in like an year to see what happened and to see what's going on. So, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It was great to hear about you your personal story and what you're doing at Rakuten and the rest of the
Thank you.
world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Monica. Really a pleasure to be here. And we'll definitely see what happens in 1 year. And hopefully, industry is talking more forward steps. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you all in the audience for following us. Keep listening to us and tell your friends about it.